Greetings, welcome. Come on in, turn it up. It's the Weekly Trim with yours beardly, Redbeard. We're back. Although, did we really ever actually go anywhere? In my case, well, I should say in our case, yes, we actually did go to quite a few places. And that's part of the reason why there's been a bit of a gap of time between the last episode of this program and where we are now. I know we call this thing the Weekly Trim, but I was very honest, if you'll recall, in one of our first episodes in saying, hey, this might be a weekly thing, this might be a monthly thing, this might be a as I'm able to do it kind of thing. And as it's turned out, it's become sort of a more as I'm able to do it kind of thing. But nevertheless, we are glad to be back, and we are glad to have those of you out there who are paying attention to the program, who are members of the channel that we've got here on YouTube. Definitely appreciate all of our subscribers and the folks who have been longtime members of what we're doing here on the Wrestling with Redbeard YouTube channel. Of course, we've been adding a lot of match videos here recently. We've been able to attend some events. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about in our opening segment here. But also just catch up on life in general, because this is, as other people have said, a life podcast as well. And really and truly, the past couple of weeks have been just plain crazy since we last talked here on the program. I have had a tremendous amount of stuff going on, not only personally, but also professionally. And really and truly, it's just become sort of difficult to have the time to record and to sit down for an hour, even breaking up this thing into several days, which is what I had been done previously, to where I would start a show, and then as topics become up, I'd record a session and piece that together into one of our episodes that we had done previously. But as things were going with my job and with things around the house here, it just was to a point where it's like, ugh, do I really have the time? Do I really even want to record something? And also the big question, is anyone going to actually think any of that crap is genuinely interesting and want to listen to it? Maybe. I know this is, one of those things where as a YouTuber, a vlogger, a blogger, whatever you want to call it, you have to kind of weigh your battles and pick your battles in terms of saying, okay, well, how much do I talk about? How much do I reveal? How much of this is going to create an interesting topic? Excuse me, got a little tongue-tied there. And how much is going to be too revealing to be safe these days? Of course, people would probably tell you if you're doing something like this, you're not being safe, period, because you're ultimately revealing too much anyway. But I'm getting off on a tangent as far as all this is concerned, but just wanted to make sure that everybody knows we're still around. We're still doing lots of stuff, lots of fun things happening. But just, life, I don't want to say life gets in the way, but when it comes to doing stuff like this, life does often get in the way, which is weird because we want to talk about life on a program like this. So it is what it is. I would love to be a full-time vlogger or whatnot, because I follow people like the Tim Tracker, for example, on YouTube, and they do a daily vlog every single day. They churn out a vlog, and it's just amazing that they have the time and the ability to do that sort of thing. I know that they are one of the more followed couples on YouTube in terms of their reach and whatnot, but still, just to have not only the amount of content and the time to put together those videos and to edit them and whatnot, it's just crazy to think, like, what could I do if I had all that time? Probably sit on the couch and play Xbox at this point in time, but still, from the standpoint of looking at being an online entity, an online personality as a full-time gig, they do it very well, and a lot of people do it very well. But it just kind of blows my mind that that's what some people are able to do. It's very cool, but it's just mind-blowing at the same time in relation to somebody like me who can't put together seemingly an hour program once a week for you guys to listen to and enjoy. But all that having been said, also wanted to mention that in the midst of all that other stuff, we were actually able to see some wrestling, and see some very good wrestling at that. We got to attend 2 shows since the last time that we've recorded one of these episodes. The first one that we saw was Palmetto Championship Wrestling's Off the Leash program, which was held on May 11th, 2018 over at Vive Church in Columbia, South Carolina. A very fun show. The Vive venue, it's a church. Now, before anybody gets any weird notions about that, about wrestling being a church, let's go ahead and say that this is I won't say reverent, because that would be the wrong term to use. It's very respectful to the environment. This is definitely a family type event. PCW doesn't have anything that's crazy in terms of the characters and whatnot that they have on their roster. Nobody's really outlandish with what they do, although they did have the Gymnasty Boys on this card. So that's a little bit stretching it, but they were very tame. They reeled themselves in, so no issues there whatsoever. But Vive as a venue is amazing. It's got the feel of a old studios type presentation. Their church is a very modern church in that it has all the accoutrements of a modern production, in that you've got lights, you've got sound, you've got projection screens. It's very much a multimedia environment, which makes it great for wrestling because they can take advantage of all that stuff. And it gives you the sense of the show being much bigger than it might actually be. But, the Vive shows are small. They say maybe total capacity might be in the area of maybe 300. I mean, that would probably be pushing it. It might probably be safer to go in the area of maybe 250 to 275, but 300 maybe you could get them in there. For this show, I want to say they had around 225, 230, somewhere in there. So very good attendance, and they usually are very well attended at Vive because, like I say, it's a great venue, and it's very conveniently located in northeast Columbia. So easy to get to from a lot of different areas because it's not too far off of I-77. But to run down the card here for that show, first match of the night, you had the Grizzle Young vet Eli Grizzlewood defeating Country Jacked Brady Pierce and also the Ginger Ninja Brady Collins and Classless Mason Miles. That was a 4-way match there that wound up having PCW Heavyweight Championship implications because immediately after the match, Jack Bismarck, who is not only the manager of Classless Mason Miles, but also Big Country and the Project Kevin Ray, he comes out, brings Big Country with him, and immediately challenges Grizzlewood to a match later on in the card. Grizzlewood would accept, so we'll talk a little bit more about their match here in a few moments. Next, you had a really cool matchup between two guys that you would probably consider cruiserweights, for sure in the form of Tracer X. You would have a true blue cruiserweight, but he was challenged by the Rat Slayer, Malachi Matthews. Malachi did get the win over Tracer there. But after the match, here again, you have post-match excitement going on. Fast as hell, Ian Maxwell comes out with the big man that he's got as his cohort these days, Montana Black. I'll tell you what, Montana, if you've not seen this dude, he's only going to get bigger. And that's crazy because he's in the area, I'd say, of 6'6", 6'7", somewhere in there, and just a monster of a man. And he's only going to get better as time goes on here. But he and Ian Maxwell were a tag team, and they were looking for a challenge. And they came out and challenged Tracer X and Malachi Matthews. However, they had just had their match, and Malachi said, well, guess what? There's somebody else here who will be more than happy to take your challenge. And that's where the Gymnasty Boys came into the play. And they did accept the challenge from Ian Maxwell and Montana Black there. They came out with their Fest Wrestling belts, the APW Chester Tag Team Wrestling belts. I think they might be the IWA Mid-South Tag Team Champions now as well. They came out with a stack of belts, basically, folks, and they successfully defended those belts against Maxwell and Black in what was a very entertaining match. Had a great back and forth action between those two. If you've never seen the Gymnasty Boys, you really need to get to a show and see them when they're in their element, and they definitely were here at this one. So after that, it was intermission time, and like we said, there was probably in the area of 225, 230 people in attendance there. Big news at intermission was when a recorded video from PCW General Manager Dave Foster was played, and he announced that Palmetto Championship Wrestling will be having the first ever Palmetto Classic. It's going to be coming up in June, and it's going to be an 8-man tournament. For more information on that, you can check out Palmetto Championship Wrestling's Facebook page. They've started to do a little bit of advanced promotion on this show, so definitely go check that out and see what they've got building up towards the Palmetto Classic, which is going to be, I think, a pretty cool thing. I'm always a big fan of tournament-style shows, and that's going to be the first that we've seen in this area in quite some time. The next match on the card, you had what my thought was, I'll go ahead and say my match of the night here, although there were two that were real close. This one and the main event were also very, very good. But you had top-tier athlete Drew Adler defeating Built to Self-Destruct Billy Brash. These two really had a great amount of chemistry going on, as you would expect from these two, though, because Drew Adler, I've sung his praises since I first encountered the man here a couple of years ago. He's been on the top of my list for guys who have the potential to take that next step. Although I will say nowadays, I think Billy Brash is in that same conversation. He is almost an entirely different animal since having gone out to California to train with the New Japan Pro Wrestling Dojo out there. He was one of the first people to be a part of that dojo and have an opportunity to train with those guys. It really has done a lot for him in terms of his presence, his presentation, but also the amount of physicality that he brings to his matches. Not that he wasn't a physical competitor previously, but he really has gotten to a point where he's able to add a lot of impact and emotion and just plain feeling to what he's doing in the ring. That's something that a lot of young wrestlers don't get, is that if what you're doing doesn't have a point, there's no reason to have done it at all. And now I think Billy has really started to grasp that, and that's only going to make him so much better in the future. So definitely a top matchup there between those two men. Then you had the championship match that we spoke about earlier, and the fact that you had a spur-of-the-moment kind of thing come up here, where unfortunately for Eli Grizzlewood, he had to challenge the Southern Punisher and take that opportunity in the form of the Big Country there, who is the PCW heavyweight champion. It didn't work out too well for Grizzlewood. Of course, whenever you have anybody from the likes of Big Country or whatnot, they're going to bring Jack Bismarck with them, and he was able to interfere in the match, unfortunately, and cause Grizzlewood to lose the match. So, unfortunately, that opportunity was squandered. And then the main event, the PCW Soda City Championship, was defended by Kevin Ray, also being managed by Jack Bismarck. You see a kind of a recurring theme here in some of these matches. But it went to a 30-minute time limit draw as he was challenged by Ethan Case. It was kind of a student versus teacher scenario there. Definitely a very interesting thing to see. I will say that there was a moment in time where it became very pronounced what they were going to do in terms of the breakdown of this match, in terms of the story they were presenting. Because in wrestling, there are often things that are done to present time cues to the guys in the ring. And at one point, the ring announcer, Donovan Walker, he mentioned that there were 5 minutes remaining in the match. And he's just doing he's doing what he's told. But at that point in time, I was like, oh, they're going to do a 30-minute draw. That's what they're doing. And it kind of deflated the room because more than just me picked up on what they were doing in that moment. It's kind of hard to avoid. I will say, because you're in one of those scenarios where you feel like you have to inform the competitors of how much time is left in the match, but at the same time, it's like, oh, you're going to do all this, you're going to have all this action, and then it's going to end with a decision that really doesn't change anything or affect anything whatsoever. So, it kind of is what it is. But they did go to a 30-minute draw. We'll see if that does anything for them in the future in terms of maybe a rematch or whatnot, but who knows. Still, a very good show, very fun show overall, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do here with that Palmetto Classic tournament. To my knowledge, I'm not aware if they've announced any competitors who will be involved in that yet, but as we did say, you can find out more about it on the Facebook machine there by looking them up, Palmetto Championship Wrestling on Facebook. Get all your details there on what's coming next in the near future for PCW. Now, in talking about the next show that we were able to attend, I want to first say that the experience I had in going to this show was absolutely terrible. And it's not the fault of the promotion, but getting to this show was, and also returning home from this show, was probably the worst experience I've had in a very long time. And I've driven through snow here not too long ago and getting to an event. But we went up to Greenville, South Carolina, to see the debut event of Pro Wrestling Turbo, which was here just a couple of weeks ago. It was a very nice place. The venue there in Greenville, I don't know if they call it the Croc Center or the K-Rock Center, but it's part of a complex of athletic facilities, and I believe there's also a school there. Very awesome facility in terms of the way it's laid out. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot in the way of parking, which I think is a common problem to a lot of Greenville, as Greenville has continued to grow, but not necessarily to become accommodating to the amount of people who are in Greenville these days. But nevertheless, just to speak briefly about the experience in getting up there, to get to Greenville from where I am in the state of South Carolina, you have to go along Interstate 26. And in getting from where I am to there, you have to go through a part of Columbia that is called Malfunction Junction, and that is where Interstate 26 meets with Interstate 20. It is always in the afternoons a problem. Every single day there is either a wreck, a slowed motorist, something that is causing a backup of, in some cases, 10 to 15 miles worth of delays and slowdowns. This was a Friday afternoon. I probably should have left earlier than I did. I thought I gave myself a little bit of time, but nope. It was already calamity and malfunctioning at the junction there by the time I got there. So we wound up sitting in traffic for a good bit of time. We also had a lot of rain, a lot of issues in terms of weather getting up there as well. I thought that we were probably going to find adequate parking when we got to the venue. I wound up having to make several laps in order to find somewhere to park. Wound up parking in an area where I hoped I would not get towed or ticketed, and fortunately I did not encounter either of those grievances. However, I really thought that this was going to be the first show ever that I've been to where I thought I was going to wind up being late. I really and truly thought I was going to walk into the venue and they'd be in the middle of the first match, because I didn't get there until almost 7:45, and the show was scheduled to start at 7:30. And sometimes indie shows don't start on time. That does happen. You have people who are late. You have things that are going on, whatever. In this case, kudos to Pro Wrestling Turbo. Because of the weather, because of various issues with parking, they did delay the opening of the show until 7:45. So as I was coming in, the ring announcer was still going over the opening remarks and whatnot. So really was just sort of saved by the skin of my teeth there with that opportunity to still get in there before the action had started for the evening. And running down the card here for this show, we had a combination of some talent we haven't seen before and some that we haven't seen in a while. So it was a fun show from that dynamic, but also from the standpoint of just being a very well-run event, especially for their first time out. I'll say their first time out in this promotion, because the two guys who were involved with this. Well, let me back up there. One of the two guys who was involved in this promotion, TK Stark, he originally was a part of the Ultra Wrestle promotion that ran a couple of years ago in the Upstate. Unfortunately, that went south, so this is not necessarily his first venture in terms of promoting wrestling, but Josh Powers is his, I'll say, co-owner or accomplice, maybe, might be a better word in describing Pro Wrestling Turbo. So they're working together on this thing, and for their first time out as a duo, I'd say it went very well for them. But first match of the evening, you had Austin Jordan, who, if you're not familiar with him, he is a talent who's worked primarily up in the, I'll say, the upstate of South Carolina, the western regions of North Carolina, and also northeast Georgia. He is the current 3-count pro wrestling next level champion, which is kind of like a not really a cruiserweight, but maybe like a kind of a mid-card title that they have in their competition. But he defeated fast as hell Ian Maxwell. So here we have two mentions of Ian Maxwell in one segment here. But good to see both those guys. Definitely could see a few moments there where they weren't quite on the same page. Still an entertaining matchup, and looking forward to seeing what both of those guys do in the future. You had a match between, next on the card, you had a match between the independent variable Tracer X and Mean Dean Richards. Tracer X did get the victory in that contest there, so it's good to see him back into his winning ways. And moving on from there, you had a intergender match, something you don't see very frequently, definitely here in the South anyway. A guy I had never seen before, Jax Insane, was challenging pretty much anyone, and the anyone who winds up answering his challenge is none other than Savannah Evans. That's right, the 2017 Carolina's Professional Wrestling Award Female Wrestler of the Year, Savannah Evans. And she did defeat Jax Insane. Good combination of talent there, I'd say, because they really played to the woman hater type masochist male and Savannah as the strong female. So it was a good combination of characters there. Then the fourth match, you had a tag team contest where the Sons of Steel, Bryce Anthony and Boomer Payne, defeated what they were calling the Duckfist Club of Josh Powers and Off Kilter Rob Killjoy. Very fun tag team matchup here. Very old school in terms of the presentation. I will say this. There was some controversy in the CPWAs last year over the tag team of the year. I will say that the Sons of Steel are making a very strong play to definitely make sure that they get noticed in the running for that tag team category that we have there in the CPWAs. So we're definitely watching you guys. Keep that in mind there. Big news coming out of that match, though, was the announcement by Josh Powers, who revealed that his former tag team partner, Anthony Giazzo, will be returning to Pro Wrestling Turbo's next event where they'll reform the Breakfast Club and take on the Sons of Steel in a match that I will say is probably 2 or 3 years in the making. I don't think they've ever had a match previously, but they will be coming together on the return date of August 11th, where they'll be back at the K-Rock or the Croc, whatever, the Alligator Center. I'm not sure what the hell it is, but it's there in Greenville. So definitely check out the Pro Wrestling Turbo Facebook page for more information on that event. We were at intermission at that point in time. I want to say the attendance, and I'm usually a horrible judge of these things because I'm trying to count chairs and whatnot. I want to say attendance was between 230 and 250 for this event. I've heard some people say 300. I don't know. It might be close, but I think it's probably more between 230 and 250. We'll say that. But at any rate, moving on from there, the fifth match of the evening was a three-way dance where Zuka King, the current APW Chester heavyweight champion, defeated the Thoroughbred Jackson James and Devin Cruz. Great combination of talent in that matchup. Zuka King is someone who's made, I'll say, strides by leaps and bounds here in the past 6 or 8 months in terms of his development, not only physically, but also in terms of his character and his persona. So great to see him continuing to make progress here. Jackson James, he's one of those guys to where you think you could put him out there with anybody, and they would be able to have a fantastic matchup. Great physique, great charisma from him, and also Devin Cruz. If you've not seen this young man work yet, I will say this. I want to say, I'll definitely say this. Here again, I'm getting looped around here in my commentary, but within the next 2 to 3 years, if he can continue to develop his physique, I think Devin Cruz could be in the same ballpark as a Tracer X in terms of where he is popularity-wise. He's a cruiserweight, a little bit undersized, definitely almost kind of a super crazy physique, we'll say, in terms of not being all that trim, but still being incredibly athletic and mobile in the ring. So definitely look for him to get a lot of progress and a lot of attention here in the next couple of years, especially if he can buckle down and continue to develop himself. And then for the main event of the evening, you had top shelf TK Stark defeating Beastly Brody. Beastly Brody, if you've never seen him before, definitely one to watch and one to pay attention to, because he has that rare combination of visible gimmick, being this hair-covered, almost werewolf-like human being who is brutal in the ring with what he delivers as far as his offense is concerned, and just, kind of a wild man type thing. And then by contrast, you've got TK Stark, who is the hard-partying, top-shelf frat boy that he is almost in this persona that he's presenting. So overall, you had a fun night of action there. Unfortunately, had some issues in terms of travel, but still not that bad. Still, anytime you can go out and see a show, have a good time, see some of your buddies, it's not a bad experience whatsoever. So all that having been recorded and documented, I want to go ahead and take our first break here on the show for the June 4th, 2018 edition of the Weekly Trim with yours beardly, Redbeard. We'll be back in a few moments to talk about some other things that we've been doing other than just wrestling.
Let's go. Temperature rising higher and higher, it's burning through to my soul. Oh, girl, 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 you gonna set me on fire. My brain is flaming and I don't know which way to go. The kisses lift me higher, like a sweet song of a choir. When you light my morning sky with burning love. Ooh, 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 I feel my temperature rising. Help me out, flaming, it must be 109. I'm burning, burning, I'm burning and nothing can cool me. It's just my turn to smoke, but I feel fine. Yeah, your kisses lift me higher, like a sweet song of a choir. When you light my morning sky with burning love. Guitar. Now it's coming closer, the flames are now licking my body. Yeah, won't you help me? I feel like I'm slipping away. It's hard to breathe, and my chest is a heaving. Yeah, Lord have mercy, I'm burning a hole where I lay. Your kisses lift me higher, like a sweet song
everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for continuing to support us here on the podcast, the Weekly Trim. Appreciate you hanging out and for listening to the show. If you have not already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on, and definitely want to make sure that you're able to know when we've uploaded new content, whether it be something in the form of a match video, a highlight clip, a new episode of this here podcast, or whatever else we're doing on the Wrestle the Redbeard YouTube channel. So make sure you click that subscribe button and also hit that little bell notification icon there as well. That way you'll get a message sent straight to your device letting you know that there is some new content out there on the Wrestling with Redbeard YouTube channel. I want to talk about now a experience that my wife and I had here within the past couple of weeks where we were able to go on a cruise with the Disney Cruise Line on board the beautiful Disney Dream. I cannot say enough about this experience. We had a tremendous time. Would leave right now to go on another one if I at all could. So I think I'm getting ahead of myself in sort of saying how tremendous of and how great an experience it was, because I want to go through and I want to talk about a lot of the different things that we encountered, some real high points of our experience, and just, detail as much of the experience as we can in the confines of this here podcast. In talking about this cruise, we left on a Thursday evening from our home here in South Carolina, drove about a little more than halfway down. We're going to be leaving out of Port Canaveral in Florida. We have found a couple of different spots that we like to stop at on the way down when we're traveling to Florida. If we're making the trip to Orlando to the parks, we like to stop at a little town called Kingsland, Georgia, which is just about 3 miles away from the Florida border on I-95. It's a great little, I shouldn't say resort town, but a little getaway town because there's a ton of restaurants, a ton of hotels, a lot of great options there. We didn't stop there on this trip, though. We stopped at Palm Coast, Florida, which is another town that has a lot of hotels and whatnot there as well, but there's a nice little Red Roof Inn that we've encountered there, and it's become sort of a welcome respite when you've been on the road for 3 or 4 hours and you just want to get some sleep before you get up the next morning to finish the leg of your trip. And that's exactly what we did. It's only about an hour and a half from Palm Coast to Port Canaveral, so you get to the port and you're not totally worn out. You've had a good breakfast, you've had some rest, and you're ready to get on the boat here. And the whole process of getting into the port, I have to say, it's been a while since we've cruised with another company, because this is the second Disney cruise that we've been on here in the past 8 months, because we were on another one back in November of last year. We've cruised with Carnival previously, but that was back in 2012, so that's been long enough ago to where, I'll be honest, I don't remember a whole lot about the experience of actually boarding that vessel. But in terms of getting into the port for the Disney Cruise Line, very easy, very well directed. They have great staff pointing you directly to where you need to go. We chose not to leave our luggage at the area where the porters are. What you can do is you can actually go straight to the parking garage, and if you don't have a huge amount of luggage, you can just carry it off and then drop it with the porters, as opposed to having to stop there before you go and park. We got there fairly early because we had a early boarding time. We were supposed to board around the 11:30 a.m. area, and we got to the port, got parked, got our luggage dropped off, got checked in. I want to say we might have been 30 minutes total time from the point in time that we actually entered the area around the port to when we were in the check-in area waiting to get queued up to wait for our boarding time. So we got up pretty early that morning, and then we arrived an hour and a half later, got in there, and we were just ready to go. We had no issues whatsoever in terms of the check-in process, just as smooth as could be. The parking process and dropping our luggage off at the porters, very smooth, no issues there. Security was great to deal with. Just the whole process of getting on the boat was very easy and didn't have any of the hang-ups that you sometimes encounter with dealing with, like, I'll say TSA or, getting on a plane. That's still my most recent comparison that I can put this to in terms of when we went to Punta Cana here a while back and had to deal with, international customs and whatnot. This was totally opposite of that. Great experience, top to bottom. We were able to board right on time there. Didn't have any issues at all getting on the ship. The great thing that they do whenever you are boarding is that members of the command staff and some of the entertainment crew are there to welcome you. They will actually announce, now boarding the Truesdale family, in our case. And everyone gets that same treatment, so where they almost roll out sort of a red carpet for you. And you're immediately welcomed into the atrium of the ship. And as I mentioned, this was a cruise aboard the Disney Dream. The Dream has a sister ship, the Disney Fantasy, which was the one that we sailed on in November. So we've been able to enjoy both of these boats now. They're on this class of the Disney fleet. Beautiful boat. The atrium is colorful, vibrant, lots of marble in terms of the tile and the work that's in there. I'll go and be honest, we are people who enjoy a good meal. So about as soon as we got on the boat, we headed to the Enchanted Garden for lunch, which there's 3 restaurants on this particular vessel. One is the Enchanted Garden, another is the Animator's Palette, and the final one is the Royal Garden, the Royal Palace, I'm sorry. They all have different themes in terms of what they present. The Enchanted Garden is kind of like we'll say a New Orleans, Old South style presentation. You could probably almost say maybe an English presentation as well there, because some of these things mixed together in terms of their theming. But we had lunch there, had an opportunity to get seated and served. Great opening meal there. I'm a big fan of smoked salmon. And seemingly the only time I can ever get some good smoked salmon is on these boats. So I had to have some smoked salmon there as soon as we got on. Not too long after that, we were setting sail and we were on our way. Here again, a very smooth boat here. We were in what they call a navigator's stateroom. It's a stateroom that has a balcony attached to it. Very cool thing here because you're able to have your own little private balcony, but you're able to avoid a lot of like the noise and whatnot of the ship because of the location of this particular stateroom, because we were in the middle of the boat. There was really no engine noise that we could pick up on. A little bit of a gentle rock in terms of the feel of the boat at that position in the vessel, but nothing that's very obtrusive, nothing that's, in my opinion anyway, that would be something that would shake someone up and give them that awful little seasickness feeling. Not to me anyway. I'm not someone who's really susceptible to that kind of thing, so I might not be that valid to explain it to you as such, but still, to me, very smooth section of the boat. After we got underway, and after we'd had a chance to kind of wander around the boat a little bit, unpack our stuff, get situated and whatnot, we were headed off to have another meal. And that is one of the big things about these boats, is that the food on these vessels is amazing. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about the buffet, one of the restaurants, or even room service. The quality of food is as good as you'll find really anywhere in the world, in my opinion. And on these boats, the Disney Dream and also the Disney Fantasy, there is an Italian-inspired restaurant called Palo, P-A-L-O. I had it right the first time, so I was going to correct myself. But Palo is, I'll say, probably our favorite restaurant, period. It is a tremendous experience unlike any other. You have this really high-class experience to where it's broken down into a paced, multi-course meal. They open you with I'll say a salvo of almost like an hors d'oeuvre plate where it's got some various cheeses, cured meats, olives, and whatnot. There's a bread course in there. the staff, the presentation of the actual restaurant itself. It looks like something out of one of the Godfather movies. And oddly enough, where we were seated in this restaurant, to our left, we were looking straight out of these windows that are up there on the deck where Paolo is. So you're looking straight out over the water. It's a beautiful scene to sit there and just watch as the boat is moving along. And it's kind of late in the evening when we were dining up there, so it was starting to get dark. But you could see just for, of course, miles and miles and miles in either direction. But to our left, I mentioned this just kind of reminded me of something you see in one of the Godfather movies. But to our left was a room that I described to my wife as being the Godfather room, because it was a large room meant for a big party. And it just looked like you would see, Michael Corleone or Frito or whoever else there in that room having a meal and conducting business and whatnot. It looked really and truly like something that could have been in one of those movies. So it was really cool to see that in there, in addition to having the meal that we did. I'm not going to describe the whole menu that we chose, because I don't want to just gush over the whole thing. But our waitress was a young woman named Corinne. She was, oddly enough, it's an Italian restaurant, but she herself was from France. So you have kind of a difference in cultures being presented there. But she was a great help in getting us through the menu. We kind of knew what we were desiring before we even went in there, because having dined at Paolo previously on the Disney Fantasy, we knew what we were in for, and we were not disappointed in any way, shape, or form. We had our favorite thing, which has become the calamari appetizer that they have on this menu. If you're a fan of calamari at all, this is probably, and I know there's great calamari in a lot of different places, but this is cooked as perfectly as any I've ever had. Calamari is one of those crazy things to where if you cook it too long or too short, it's almost inedible. If you get it exactly right, it is an amazing experience. And that's what they do consistently every time we've had this appetizer. Great stuff. Definitely would encourage anybody who ever gets on one of these boats, please do check out Paolo. There is limited seating available for it. It's not included as part of your cost of fare for getting on the boat. It is an extra charge, but it's only $30 a person. $30. I think you can probably save up, your coins out of your couch cushions there if you're planning on going on one of these cruises to have an experience like this. You owe it to yourself. Trust me, folks. $30 a person, you get a meal that you'll remember for probably a lifetime, in my opinion. But after we had dinner at Paolo, it was kind of late in the evening, so Jill wanted to go back to the room and get some rest. So she did that. Meanwhile, I headed off to one of the they have it's like a section called, I think they call it the district on one of these boats, but it might not be what they call it on this one. But it's an area where there are sort of nightclubs and different bars and whatnot. It's something for the adults on the cruise to be able to go over and enjoy. And in one of the rooms there, they had a hypnotist named Dale Kay who was performing. And, oh, man, I got to the show a little bit late, so I didn't see his opening where he actually picked people from the crowd. But if you've never seen a hypnotist performing, it's crazy. It's just really, really crazy in that, one, these people volunteered to have this experience, but then two, that they're able to actually do what they do in providing these suggestions to these willing victims, you might as well go ahead and say. Really funny show. I won't go into detailing all that he did to some of these folks, but he was able to convince the two final men on the panel that he had that they were the first ever men to have been impregnated, and that they were going to give birth right there on the stage. Yeah. So you can imagine how that whole thing there went. But great experience there, and I could not speak any more highly of the first day that we had there on the boat. Of course, since I was there already, I said, well, what the heck? Let's go ahead and have a drink while we're on this part of the boat. So I went over to the pub that is there in that area as well. It's Pub 687, as they call it. That's one of the two differentiations between the Disney Dream and the Fantasy. There is a pub on both of these boats. It's kind of a sports bar type of thing. But on the Dream, it's called Pub 687. On the Fantasy, it's O'Gill's Pub. Kind of the same thing, just a little bit different in terms of the look and feel. But overall, great first day. And we were only that much into our cruise, and that was only day one. So, with that having been said, we're going to take another break, and I'll be back to talk about our final couple of days on the cruise and give you some more details about the whole experience there. Appreciate you guys tuning in and for being a part of the show. We'll be back in a few. Hey gang, appreciate you sticking around and hanging out with us here on the weekly trim as we're talking about my wife and I's experience on the Disney Dream. Here recently we took a cruise and just had a great time. We are travel aholics, I'll go ahead and say. We love to get on the road, we love to do things, we love to see places, and a cruise is one of those great opportunities to do a lot of both, because you're presented with not only the chance to travel to a port that you might not have been to previously, in an area you might not have visited previously, but also to, once you're on the ship, have experiences both on the vessel, but also at the various ports of call that you visit. Now, on this cruise, we had two ports of call, Nassau and also Disney's private island, Castaway Cay. I will say this, when we plotted out our thoughts on what we were going to do on this cruise, we had the initial thought, well, we might not get off at Nassau, just because we've both been there before, It doesn't really change a whole lot in terms of what the experience is in getting off the boat. You more or less see the markets that are there, the shops and whatnot. It's very touristy, unless you want to walk off from that main area near the port and take a cab or whatever type of transportation deeper into the island. You're kind of you're seeing what it is there at the port for the time that you have there, because you only have a couple hours. In our case, you had about 6 or 7 hours to go off of the ship if you wanted to, and then you had to be back in time for it to set sail and head to our next port of call. Now, as I said, we were thinking about not getting off the boat, but then I said, well, let's just see what kind of excursions they offer. Let's see if there's maybe a cultural experience or something that we can have while we're here. Because I just felt, well, we're here, we're on this trip, we might as well try and take advantage of it. And I will say that we've never really been out of that market area in Nassau, so this was an opportunity in my opinion. So we looked at the onboard area there where they have activities listed, and they have an offering of excursions, and usually it's things like dolphin encounters or a shopping tour or something like that. But we found one called Made in Nassau. And it described that you would be taken to the Tasty Teas facility there in Nassau, and also a rum distillery, in addition to being given sort of a tour of the area around the port and whatnot. And it wasn't very expensive. I think it was around $60 a person. Lunch was also included. And we said, well, you know what? Let's just give it a shot. It was a great experience. I'm really glad that we did it, because we got to meet some fun people. We had a good meal. We saw some parts of the island we wouldn't have seen otherwise. And we got to just experience Nassau other than the port itself. So I would really encourage you, if you're visiting Nassau, try and find something that's going to give you a sense of the culture of an area. We always want to see and experience something that's unique to wherever we're visiting. And it doesn't matter if that's a unique food item, a drink, a beverage, whatever it is. I want to have something that's unique to where I am, because that's the sense that you're not going to get when you come back home. You're not going to be able to have that same, whatever prepared the way it was there, because the people who prepare it are the reason it is the way it is. And, it's just great to see things like the distillery, for example, and see the passion that those folks have for creating the liquors that they do. It's a very small little operation there that we saw at John Watley Distillery. They produce in the area of a couple hundred bottles a day. They don't ship off the island. They only sell there on the island. And that gives you a sense of just, how much they're able to do in terms of business. The cool thing about their distillery, and just want to mention this before we move on to other experiences on the cruise, was that the building itself not only had been there for several hundred years, but, well, not several hundred, but quite a few. It's in the area of more than 100, because it was associated with various pirateers in the area of pirates, and when piracy was still rampant in the Caribbean. But the building itself was also used in the filming of one of the 007 movies. So they have a little plaque there detailing as much, saying, hey, this is where, I think this might have been Casino Royale. I think it was that one there. But this is where this was shot. So it's pretty cool to see that there as well. But had a great time there on Nassau. Like I say, met some great people. Were able to have some good drinks and whatnot, and just have a great little experience. So definitely worthwhile, definitely worth getting off the boat. As I said, we were thinking about not leaving the boat that day, but I really am glad we did, because we wouldn't have had those experiences otherwise. Dinner that evening, we had experience at the Enchanted Garden. This was our first of the experiences we would have in the proper dining rooms with our assigned wait staff. I know I mentioned that we had been in the Enchanted Garden for lunch on our first day, but when you're there at that point in time, you're not with your normal waiters that you would be actually accompanying from the various restaurants. They have what they call a rotational dining, to where you're going to different restaurants each night. However, your staff, like your waiters, follow you. So, like on the first night, we were supposed to have been at Animator's Palette, but we chose to go to Paolo instead. The second night we're going to be, or this night that I'm talking about now, we were at the Enchanted Garden, and our final night we were going to be at the Royal Palace. We have the same waiters for all three experiences, and that way they have an opportunity to get to know you, to suggest things, and to just provide a more customized experience. But we had a great meal there at the Enchanted Garden, got to know our wait staff a little bit. The main event of the evening, though, was the opportunity to see the live production of Beauty and the Beast there in the Walt Disney Theater on board the Disney Dream. I cannot really put this thing into words. It's really amazing, and it's really just crazy to me that this takes place on a boat. Because it's a Broadway level production. It is as seamless as anything you'll ever see in your life in terms of the pacing, the story, the acting, the vocal talent that these people have in terms of not only being able to deliver their lines, but then sing in most cases, remember their staging and whatnot. It's just amazing to watch something like this come together, not only from a standpoint of the performances, but also technically speaking. The theater that they're operating in is a technical marvel because there are all these various parts of the set that move, and the actual presentation of the environments they're in. It's not handled with traditional sets. They have projection walls that are changing and animated and just sort of alive. Great experience to see this whole thing put together. We were looking forward to it, and it did not disappoint. We actually saw it twice. We saw it this first night, and we said, well, we got to see it again. So we came back the next night and saw it again. The second night we were up in one of the balcony sections. That was even better in terms of the viewing angle because we were able to see the entire stage. This is based on more of the live action film than it is the animated original. Not to say that one doesn't differ from the other a whole lot, but there's that real heart-wrenching moment there. If you've not seen the live action version, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go ahead and spoil this for you, where Cogsworth and Lumiere and so many of the other characters who have been enchanted by the curse of the beast, who are just realizing that their time has run out and that they're suddenly going to be, contained in these vessels to where they are, no longer themselves. They are a candlestick or a clock. And it's just this heartbreaking moment where they suddenly realize, oh no, we're done. We can't do anything more. This is it. And it's like, it's almost like the scene from Toy Story 3 where they're all kind of holding hands and they just admit, oh man, we're going to go into the furnace here all at the same time. It's that same level of, I'm an adult, why am I crying type of experience. But man, it's so great. It just, from a performance standpoint, if you're at all a fan of live performance, you owe it to yourself to see this thing. Disney, they do a number of really just crazy live performances, not only on these ships, but also in the parks as well. We've talked a lot in the past about how good the Finding Nemo live action play is at the Animal Kingdom Park. This is even better than that. And just really owe it to yourself if you have an opportunity to see this thing. Don't YouTube it. Don't do that. Go book yourself a cruise. See this thing live. You'll definitely enjoy it if you're at all a fan of Disney and Beauty and the Beast type stuff. But our final day really on the cruise, we spent at Castaway Cay, which is Disney's private island. Yes, Disney has a private island. You probably shouldn't be too surprised by that. But we didn't have our son with us on this tour, so we did spend our entire time at the Serenity Bay area of Castaway Cay. It's the adults-only area where kids aren't allowed. It's usually a little more quiet, I would say, than it was on this trip because there were a lot of adults, a lot of just couples on this trip. So it was a little more busy over at Castaway Cay, at the Serenity Bay area of Castaway Cay than it was on our previous trip. Still a great experience, though. crystal clear water that you can wade out into and just enjoy. Unlike, the type of water that we have here off the coast of South Carolina, not that you can't go swimming in it, but, you can't see the bottom. Whereas here in the Caribbean, you can go out there and be accompanied by a school of fish or an inquisitive stingray possibly, or a sea turtle or a starfish. So much little wildlife that you could interact with, and just by being there, they're all just sort of there. And part of this great environment that Disney has created in that little chunk of the Caribbean that they happen to own. Great drinks, great food there on the island. We spent about, I'd say, 6 hours there. And then, unfortunately, it was time to get back on the boat for the final time before we would be wrapping things up with one more good meal there. This time we were in the Royal Palace. And you start to, you have that little depression that starts to sink in when you have to pack your bags and say, all right, well, we got to get off the boat here tomorrow. And the depression gets even worse when you finally do get off the boat that last morning. It's always sad to see a vacation end, but especially a trip like this where it felt like, okay, we're ready to go, we're going to enjoy this. And then it's over because we were really only sailing for 2 days, realistically. Of course, you have the day back there and sort of the day out, but those are periods of time where you're usually sleeping or doing other things. So it's not like you have a true blue day at sea like you would on a longer itinerary. But overall, a great experience. Would definitely encourage people to check out the Disney Cruise Line if you're at all interested in taking a cruise. And it's not just for people with kids and families. You'll notice that something that I did not talk about really at all here is things like character interaction. That is really a big possibility. You can spend all day, if you want to, checking out characters, meeting Mickey and Minnie and Goofy and all the others. There's a great kids area on this boat to where if you, as an adult, if you want to say, hey, go play, they'll be fine. There's a great pool deck. They have the aqueducts. There's ice cream available 24 hours a day. There's room service available 24 hours a day. There's so much to do on these boats. And I didn't even mention the fact that there's a movie theater. Yeah, we've got the Walt Disney Theater, but you've got a full-scale movie theater as well, playing things like the Avengers Infinity War and Black Panther. If we'd have been on the boat a week later, we probably would have seen Solo, a Star Wars story. But, it's just so much to do on these boats other than just sit around and do nothing. You really owe it to yourself to experience them and to just get out there and have a good time with something like a cruise. Doesn't matter if it's with Disney, Carnival, Royal Caribbean, any of those companies. They're all going to deliver a great experience to you. I wish we could say we had a great experience on the way home. Well, we started to have a little bit of car trouble. Nothing that was too serious, but at one point in time while we were driving back, still through Florida, we were almost through Jacksonville. I'm not sure what happened, but it was raining, and one of the windshield wipers on my wife's car just decided it was time to give up on life, and it ejected itself from the arm of the windshield wiper. It's the damnedest thing because it seems like we always encounter something on the road. Doesn't matter if it's a car issue or if it's like something with, like what we've encountered before where one of our credit cards gets hacked or whatever else. There's always something that we encounter on one of these trips. And in this case, it seemed to be that we were going to have some car trouble. And that was one of the two things that we had going on because we got a sense that the battery was also dying on the car. Fortunately, we were able to stop at a Walmart. We had to go about 20 miles out of the way to find a Walmart, oddly enough. But we found a Walmart, replaced the wipers on the car, got back going. The battery held up the rest of the trip. And oddly enough, or I should say ironically enough, the next day the battery was dead. And we had to call AAA to help us out here and get us jumped off. Well, not jumped off, but actually to replace the battery while the car was in our driveway. So it held out, but it made for an interesting trip home. I guess you had to have an eventful end to an eventful vacation. What can you say? It was still a great experience, something that I'll remember for a long time. And, even with the little snafus there at the end, it's not enough to put a frown on my face because I'll always remember standing in that Walmart parking lot, drenched in rain, and looking at my wife and smiling at her and saying, it's always going to be something, isn't it? Yep. It's always going to be something. We'll be back in a few, folks. We'll take our final break here and be back with another edition of What's Redbeard Drinking? Appreciate you guys tuning in.
Train a coming, it's rolling around the bend, and I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on. But that train keeps rolling on down the stadium town. When I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, don't ever play with guns. But I shot a Mandarino just to hold him by. When I hear that whistle blowing, I hang my head and cry. I bet there's fish folks eating in our fancies honey car. They're probably drinking coffee and smoking big cigars. But I know I had it coming. I know I can't be free. But those people keep on moving, and that's what tortures me. Yeah, 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 yeah. I hear the train a coming, it's rolling around the bend, and I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on. But that train keeps rolling on down the stadium town. If they free me from this prison, if that railroad train was mine, I bet I'd move out over little farther down the line. Far from Folsom Prison, that's where I want to stay. When I let that lonesome whistle blow my blues.
And we're back, folks. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on the Wrestling with Redbeard YouTube channel and the Weekly Trim podcast here. Appreciate you hanging out. Appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate you subscribing, doing all that fun stuff like liking, commenting, and sharing these things there as well. All those things that as a YouTuber I'm supposed to mention to you people who are enjoying the program that we have crafted specifically for you to enjoy. Also, when it comes to things that have been crafted specifically for our enjoyment, comes to what we're going to be having in this segment of the program. That's right, we're to the next edition of What's Redbeard Drinking. And in this episode, we have what I'll say is probably going to be a delightful option from the Bold Rock Hard Cider Company. This is their Carolina Draft option, as I'm going to call it, because they have a number of different ciders that they manufacture. This one measures in at 4.7 ABV, so not too different from a normal brew. And again, this is their Carolina Draft variety. And to give you a sense of what we're looking at here, this is the description that's on the side of the bottle. I picked this up from one of our local vendors, so if you're in the Carolinas, hopefully you can find this somewhere near you. crushed and crafted in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Our expert cider makers craft a broad blend of apples from mountain orchards in North Carolina to create this distinctive hard cider with rich complexity and superb drinkability. Smooth and mellow, Carolina Draft is perfect anytime, anywhere. And, it's cool to see small operations like this that are able to get placement in bigger grocery stores and whatnot. It just really is cool to see, smaller operations getting some credit. And now that, especially in South Carolina, that breweries can operate, on the craft level scale without having to worry about illegalities and various, legislature being in the way. I think it's going to give opportunities for even more people who are doing stuff like this to share what they're doing, cooking out of their kitchens and whatnot. So this is a bottle. This is not a can as we've done in the past couple of weeks here. So I'm going to see if we can get the pop top to register on the old microphone here. Try not to cut my lip on this bottle opener as I continue to fumble with the lid. Well, it's good and on there, that's for sure. All right, there we go. I think I got it anyway. Nope, not quite. There we go. As the bottle cap goes flying away into oblivion. Let's get a get a touch of the aroma here to get our first experience. Definitely coming across with a punch of the alcohol and also the aroma of those good red apples that you see out of the Blue Ridge area of North Carolina. If you're not familiar with that area, up around Hendersonville and Asheville, North Carolina, there are some great apple groves and some great vendors that do some just really awesome stuff with apples that are grown right up there in that part of the world. Gonna get another touch of the aroma here to get some more of the experience. Definitely doesn't come off as being something that's going to be too sweet in terms of the aroma. You have that nice tartness coming through in the scent there for sure. So let's go ahead and give this a taste. Yep. That is definitely a hard cider. You get a lot of the tartness of the apples really shining through in this, and that's really crisp. And wow, I would say this is probably comparable to, I think there's a green apple version of Angry Orchard that they produce nowadays. This is very much in line with that in terms of the taste and the experience. The tartness does come through very clearly in the flavor of the apples here. There's not a tremendous sweetness to this, which is good. It's a good differentiation between a lot of the ciders that are out there, because some of those things are just really over the head sweet. And, it's not a bad experience in terms of what those ciders are delivering. But sometimes as an adult, you want something that doesn't taste like straight apple juice. You prefer to have an actual hard cider. And that's what this is here. That's really impressive. I'm going for another swig here. That's really refreshing. As we've gotten to the point in the year where it's going to be warmer and warmer and warmer, stuff like this is really a good alternative to a traditional beer. Really am enjoying this one right now. I could see this being in a bucket on my back porch full of ice, waiting for me to get done cutting grass, and just being something that you could enjoy. That's really a good flavor on this thing. Like I say, not very sweet, enough of a sweetness that you get the experience of a good crisp apple that's, cold and just picked at the absolute perfected, or the perfect moment to where it's going to be just ripe enough to where you can get the full experience of that apple. It's been turned into this cider. Really impressed with this Bold Rock Hard Cider Carolina Draft option. I did pick up a 6-pack of this, but I'm definitely going to have to search out some of their other options here. Wow, that's really good stuff. And if you want to find out more about the Bold Rock, I started to say distillery, but the Bold Rock Hard Cider brand, check them out at boldrock.com. That one definitely gets high marks from me. Wow, that's really good stuff. Whew, good way to end the program. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us this entire show here. We definitely appreciate your patronage, appreciate all that you guys do in supporting our various videos, shows, programming, whatever you want to call it here on the Rest with the Redbeard YouTube channel. We'll try and be back a little bit more frequently with this show because we enjoy doing it, quite frankly. It's just, as we mentioned in the opener, a matter of time before we get to do it again. So, all that having been said, appreciate you guys. We'll see you down the road.